What blood type are you? There's the Japanese personality kind of thing associated with blood types. Don't really super buy into it, but I had this thought about it. Now, the actual blood itself, you look at blood type O, the actual blood itself had this game going on, right? Where game with bacteria and all kinds of other outside forces. And the game has only gotten more and more complicated. But blood type O was like first to the party, and those who stayed blood type O reject the game, right? Like they rely on the rest of the space around them, the environment, the human body environment, to deal with that game for them instead. Whereas the more complicated blood types, they have these checks and balances and little games they do between themselves to verify that things, like they have their own keys and their own encryptions they use to verify that the things that they're dealing with are actually, right, like signed holders or like valid recipients. And by that token, personality wise, I'm definitely type O, right? Like I don't like the game. The game of society, the game of in high school, people would have these little like, oh, are you part of our community checks? Masculinity itself has like all these, the American masculinity in high schools and earlier have all these checks, like literally physical, like body checks, like they'll hit each other, they'll do things like that, and it's just like, no, I don't want to play this game. But the feminine game isn't any really better because it's done in like social circles. It's done with fashion and physical appearance. And as someone who didn't really interact with this game, who hated every moment that the game was being played on me, I just have come to really despise it. I don't gain any joy at all from any of it. I just want to exist. So in order to exist, you have to exist in order to exist, I have to exist in a place that, one, tolerates me, first of all. So being type O, it's easy to be tolerated. But also, in order to really reach my own true self, I have to be in a place that's like somewhat protective of the outside elements. So like AB would be the quote most complicated. The people who really enjoy all of those social games. AB plus, I guess, would be that. Even though, a real blood type AB plus person may not actually have as many of these checks in their actual blood. Blood is complicated. Because O, A, and B, they just refer to two specific proteins that you either have or don't have on it. Whereas real blood has hundreds, possibly, maybe more than that. I don't know. Because there are games I like. There are kind of games I like, and playing those games and checking with it. And edginess is one of those kinds of games. I kind of grow bored of that kind of stuff, but just like all games, because all games are reducible. That's the problem with games, is that they are reducible worlds. You know, if you know how games work, then you can apply that game theory to many, many, many kinds of games. And then you start viewing the world as a game and all of the things in it, and then the whole world becomes shallow. But it's hard to then come back from that, because things are complicated. Life is complicated, but it's not necessarily a game. So what blood type are you? I'd say A people think they like the game, but don't necessarily, because they didn't adapt to B type. And then the B type people, they're probably people who begrudgingly accepted the game and then learned to like it. I'd say that's the kind of that's the Jolly Lane philosophy on games and blood type personality.
What about Jane Austen? Where's my copy? Pride and Prejudice here? No, not here.
Thing you have to know is that she is a better writer than you are a reader. Definitely. She is definitely a better writer than you are a reader. Hypothetical audience member who doesn't know how to read. And so she never is doing just one thing with her writing. Where is that copy? I don't think it's any of these. Is it in one of these? So the next thing you have to understand about Jane Austen is that she hates people. She hates people almost as... Oh, there it is. Part of my writing altar. Forgot I put it there. She hates people. She hates society, and she hates you specifically. So I haven't finished this because it's just so much to read. It's just books shouldn't be read from start to finish, generally speaking. Some of them will demand it of your consciousness, and you'll go along willingly. But so there's these characters, right, in this book, and all of these characters are complete and total socialites. Every single one of them. They all are super social people. Jane Austen, like almost every writer, almost every single writer in the whole world, is not a fucking socialite. I could see in a... Actually, one of these characters is kind of Jane Austen-y. She like is in the party, and then just like not part of it, and just doesn't want to do anything about it. Gets asked questions, and she's like, "Get the fuck away from me! Like, leave me the fuck alone! I don't want to deal with your shit." So like there's this other character, the main character, I think. No, it's the main character's sister, the one who's like ditzy and happy. She's ditzy and happy and written like super naive, and at the same time as she is like an admirable kind of character. Like, it's like, oh, if only I could be like this dumb and this happy. It's also like resentful, and it drips. It just drips. Like, let's see if we can find a good example. I don't have anything marked. Is it Elizabeth is the main character. It's Elizabeth's sister is the one that's like, she's like retarded. She's like actually retarded.
man, it's hard. It's a hard read from the modern perspective, right? Because the writing is so it's so dense. She writes better than I can read, and I'm not like a bad reader. And so it takes a while to read and process things. And everyone's always saying multiple things at the same time, and that's like part of the socialite game that they were playing, and it's the kind of socialite game that, like, you know how like you would have like an interaction in high school, and then you'd like seize on the interaction because you couldn't think of the right thing to say, and so you just like were shut down in this interaction, and you'd ruminate on it for days or weeks at a time. I guess I'm too loud. Maybe I should come in here and be loud in here. But then you think of the exact right thing to say. You know what I'm talking about? No? You never thought about things like that?
I'm trying not to hear
So the whole book is that. The whole book is just nothing but that. Over and over, all of the social interactions. Yeah, because there's so many, like... So many, so many things that are like, triple entendres, and not just double meanings, but like triple and quadruple meanings at the same time. And like the thing going over the head of like characters is like important, and so like keeping all this kind of stuff in mind when you're reading Jane Austen is kind of important. To find enjoyment in it. You have to like understand that that's what's going on in order to get any kind of enjoyment. If you just read the narrative and you're like, this narrative is kind of like trash, I don't blame you, but like that's like a really stupid way to read this book. Anyway.
So I have a question. The question inspired by some of my Mormon times. And it's a question I want to ask. Not super interesting to answer, though. So the question is, how do the Turkish Tatar in the Turkish Tatar population in Ukraine feel about the Ukraine conflict? I'll ask it again. How do the Turkish Tatar population in Ukraine feel about the Ukraine conflict as it is right now? I don't know. And I don't know how I would know. This was inspired by my time that I spent in Ukraine while Mormon and on my mission. I lived in Crimea at the time, in Simferopol. And in Simferopol, there's a kind of bigger-ish Turkish Tatar population. At the time there was. I don't know about the modern things. But they were mostly like off on their own communities. Their living conditions were generally more rural, and the people of Ukraine, or the people in Crimea, they viewed the Turkish as interlopers and people who came there, and people who were like lesser. Very much a racism kind of motif. And then when I noticed this in Simferopol, when I went to other places, like in Zaporozhye, I noticed the same thing still present. Now, I wouldn't say that Ukraine was extremely racist, because they had like actually a high amount of diversity in a lot of these areas. But specifically against gypsies and the Turkish Tatar, there was this kind of racism, and I think it had more to do with views about what they provided and how they provided it, and things of that nature, rather than just the fact that they were different, right? Like, because they were not super different. They had like slightly darker skin, and things of that nature. And someone was asking questions about how Americans view Mexicans in the United States at an English class, and my companions, the other missionaries there, they didn't know how to really answer this question. They didn't want to like, say the truth about it. And there is a lot of racism, especially in the places where I've lived. There's always been some amount of racism. And I said something like, "Oh, you know how the Tatar are viewed by the general population, and like how there's these feelings about the Turkish Tatar. It's basically the same. The way that they're viewed and the way that the kinds of ideas people hold and talk about, it's very similar to how Mexican population is viewed and treated and thought about in the United States public rhetoric." And I was like attacked basically for this idea. They're like, "Well, we don't view them that way. Like we don't view the Turkish Tatar as worse or inferior or whatever." And I hadn't said like all of those things. I'm saying them now, but I didn't say all those things. But I did make comparison, and I did talk about how the Mexican population was. People were mad, just really mad about it. Then after I like left, one of the people was like, I know you got like kind of attacked and sidelined there, but you're right. you're right. There is a lot of racism about the Turkish Tatar population in Ukraine, and if you're saying it's similar to how the Mexican, it seems visible, at least. It seems understandable, and people aren't just really ready to accept it because it's like you're insulting them personally, and that's never the tack you want to take. So yeah, that's my question. Anyone have an answer for that? I don't really super care all that much because it's so far removed, but it is a question that really needs to be part of that conversation for sure.